So, let's see. Oriental Institute, obviously what we have here is what in the Persian Gallery, what the Oriental Institute worked in Iran. And the OI worked primarily in Khuzestan, in this region, and in Fars, and some in the Zagros Mountains, and at Hisar and Tehran, but in connection with the University of Pennsylvania. So most of the objects from the Central Plateau up there are in Philadelphia. But we do have beautiful pottery that is representative of that culture, and they're in the basement. So when they decide to change the museum and expand it, we need to think about those things. Another thing that is missing really from our collection is we have something from Sorkhtom in the Lorestan area here, but we also have a lot of Lorestan bronzes. And when I don't know who made this strange suggestion that museums should not exhibit pieces that may have not been excavated. If you do that, you have to empty half of museums in the world, or sometimes most. That's idiotic. These are the things, and they are very interesting. A lot of people love Lorestan bronzes, and it links what we have done in the Zagros Mountains to the Achaemenid period, because that's the Iron Age 3. So hopefully we will get those things as well. And this site that Oriental Institute excavated in 1947 and 48, Yeser in here, this is the site. This site was excavated by McCown, and then I went and surveyed the region, and now a book is coming out. The objects, they are wonderful. They are from the 3rd millennium that is completely missing from the Persian Gallery. So that will be part of the exhibit as well. So we will have actually a narrative for about 6,000 years until we reach the Achaemenid. So these are for the future. So since we don't have a lot of stuff from the mountains, so we are going to concentrate on our excavation at Chogamish and Bakun. These are one of the two really most important sites in Iran. Unfortunately, we have a number of important objects associated with them. This is a picture of that is up there. You can actually show it to people all the way near the ceiling in the Persian Gallery. This is Chogamish with all the excavated areas, and it's about 17, 18 hectares. And this is Tall Bakun A, most of the beautiful stuff that you have from here, and that's Tall Bakun A, whose material was sunk by a German torpedo during the war in the Atlantic Ocean. So these are the two sites that we are going to concentrate on. Now, also Persepolis, of course, we have some outstanding objects from Persepolis. So these three sites form much of the objects in our, most of the objects in our gallery. Now, when you go to this gallery, the first thing you see is a series of simple pottery right here. And it starts from very plain and crude and all the way goes up and then becomes more sophisticated. And then from here, as you go up, and from here as you go to your right, you see that the pottery is really getting sophisticated. So you can actually talk about the pottery. I will talk about it a little bit. But two of the objects that you really want to show to people that would create some kind of conversation are these two. So ask them what they are. it's really important for people to know how these people lived, what did they eat, how did they process their food. So we have two pieces here that have a lot to do with the processing of food and actually producing food. This is of course a hand mill, and I always show it to people how difficult it is to actually grind grains with this. It's a back-breaking job, and when you really sit down on your knees and just go back and forth, it's after a while you get arthritis of the knees. So it's a difficult life. You have to tell people that how life was difficult, simple but difficult. The other one, you also want to mention to them that they don't see any metal yet. You see, it's all stone. Everything here is pottery and stone. And this one, of which we have another example, and there are a number of other examples, and one actually comes with a rope around it. This is a kind of hoe. And it's a back-breaking job to break the ground and sow your seeds. So to connect these objects to daily life and people, and then, okay, what is this? Why is it, for example, simple? And this one is plain. Well, because they didn't need to paint that. This is a storage jar. Probably part of it would go under the ground. And usually potters didn't decorate things that would not show. So, and then you can see, you can show them the pottery that is going up and becoming more sophisticated. And then you know, wait for some questions. For example, what do they use for knives? How do they cut things? You show them these blades, that this is what they use. And of course, there are figurines, because we have a number of other figurines over there. If you ask them what they are, they probably would not be able to tell you. But you can tell them that the figurines, usually, especially of humans, are so abstract in early Neolithic. And then they become a little abstract. We don't really know the psychological process behind that. Why? Animal figurines are always kind of naturalistic, but human figurines, even when they are naturalistic, they are very different from animal figurines. That's both in sculptures and in painting the pottery. So these are the things that you can bring up with people and then make things really interesting and show them some stuff. These are the close-up photos of those objects that I showed you. Here I just want to show you some of the early processes. You see that this one we don't have in the museum, but you can explain that. You see this one, you see the impression of baskets. So sometimes they made these rolls and then put them together. Sometimes they made the slabs and made the pottery. Sometimes they used collapsible baskets, and then they formed the pottery around it, and the basket would collapse and bring it out, and then this is what you get. And this is a coil technique, and also this is another basket technique. So pottery also has an evolution like everything else, so you can mention it to them. But what you also want to mention is you have to point to them that before about middle of the 6th millennium, say 5600 or so, the pottery was always painted outside, not inside. Then you start getting pottery painted inside. And we would like to think that these had to do with some kind of ritual feasting. And with that, you also get other things, other symbolic stuff. So you can see that even by chasing pottery the way they are decorated now, that you see it right a little bit when you walk to the right, you see that pottery is changing. And now inside the vessels are decorated. And you can actually bring it up that some archaeologists, not you or me, some archaeologists, I would like to subscribe to that because there is a good evidence for that. That painting inside the pottery had to do with the evolution of feasting as symbolic for power, really. These are, they put the society together, and even now when you go to a wake, to all sorts of functions, food is really a big part of it. Food is important. And then the type of vessel that you put in front of people, the type of vessel that is put in front of you, that probably would show your status. These are not meaningless stuff. I mean, art as we know today, for art, did not really exist there. Everything was so symbolic. It was for something. Sure, there were artists, but they created these things as a symbolic message to people in a feast, in a gathering, whatever. And then it changes through time. First it's with pottery, and later on you see it's with some other medium. Now, so you see that was on this side, on the left side. Now you're getting to a society that is really getting now sophisticated. Now you can see that outside the pottery is not just geometric, it's very varied, and you can see movement, some kind of dynamic pottery you're dealing here with. And this is not, you have to really let people know, this is not the type of pottery that you go and excavate and find it everywhere. These are rare, even though archaeologists would like to publish and put in the museum the best pieces, but that doesn't mean that the whole society was able to use these things. These are for people with higher status. And when you excavate a site, you see that they have a certain distribution patterns. It's not everywhere, or it's not at every site. Some of the sites don't even have these things of the same period. So these are really symbolic of people with higher status, with which appear some other things that we can actually use as a status symbol. So let's see what we have next. Look at this. I mean, the sophistication of that, of this pottery, this is, you see this, if you look at this pottery from here, you don't see anything but huge spirals. But once you look at it from the bottom, you see two goats or mountain sheep with huge spirals. Now, this is not something that people use the everyday life. These are for certain functions. And they are actually also meant to be looked at this way when they are not used. Because most of the time they were not used for certain occasion. Otherwise, the potter would not really do something like that so that it would be seen from down from the bottom, so that it would make sense. And then you have another pattern here, a torsion. You can see the torsion here. They're just tearing at each other with just simple lines. And here, of course, the balance. I mean, just you have three pieces of pottery, but you can see that three different styles, a well-balanced shape, beautiful, stylized, but very naturalistic. And then you have just geometric that creates a kind of torsion, and then the symbolic pieces. All of them there. In fact, you can actually ask, what is this? I don't remember whether they show the bottom of that in the museum too. But you can then point it to them that if you look at it from bottom, you see actually the two complete mountain shapes. Now here, this piece is also in the museum. When you look at it, if you don't really look at it closely, you wouldn't know whether the negative areas or painted areas are designs. It's obviously you're looking at some kind of bird that is repeated, but the way they have decorated that, even the reserved areas, they come out like independent designs. And you can also show this grammar of design. You can go from the early prehistoric pottery from that vitrine, and you see that you always have a large band here, small band, it repeats underneath, and the main design is in between. It can vary. Sometimes it has another band, 2 bands, up there 2 bands, but they always repeat themselves. And that is the type of grammar of design that they have for prehistoric southwestern Iran, which is very different from other places. Now, of course, you don't have that, but this is that culture that produced all. Look at the variety of these things. I would like to actually put something like that next to some of these potsherds that we have in the basement and bring it out to people, that how powerful these people, how imaginative they were, and then show the difference between executing animals that are, even though stylized, very naturalistic, and humans. Look at them. These are all, I believe, these are stretched actually a little bit, but by comparison we know. Here, look at that one. This is something Picasso should really paint. It's a very sophisticated culture, but something else goes with that. This is also from Baku. We have it at the museum. Now, you should ask visitors, what do you see? What do you see here? I don't know. I think if the drawing is not there, we should actually put it completed. These are some women or men, I cannot tell, who are dancing. Maybe flowers, maybe some ritual objects that they are holding, and they're going around and dancing. Now, these headdresses, my point is these headdresses. These are, as I said, the rituals are extremely important. Dancing, feasting, this is part of that. And you can see that. This is when societies are really developing into a state society, and you can see that these 2 guys, they have headbands. This is the big guy, of course, that's probably the Wazir, and all sorts of types of prostration in front of them. Now, you see this one, now here, these are all, see this, that, these are all from Baku, and they're all in the exhibit. Now, they have elongated heads. Not everybody has that. We know this is from Chogamish. You see that they call it deformed or elongated head. This is a human figure in female with elongated head. And here you have it from the Ubaid Mesopotamia with elongated head, lizard type. And these are all from Baku. And look at these Polynesian people. All the chief and the son of the chief and the chiefs, they all have elongated head. These are symbolic status. So even though we don't have these pictures, which we should actually, a good museum should show that, bring it out to people, what it means. So you can actually point to this and this, that these are ritualistic things, and by the time this society is becoming more complex, you see that chiefs are attaining different status. Even they deform their bodies to express who they are. After all, metal was extremely rare, and gold and silver did not exist. So you show with some signs, symbolic signs, who you are in the society. Now, we have even more. Now, tattooing. Well, this guy is expressing something, obviously. But this one is just decorative. And whether for her lover, for her husband, whatever, this is decorative. This is not. This is, the guy is being funny. But can we really extend that to prehistory? Now, these are on exhibit. They have to do exactly with this elongated head, deformed head, and the status symbol. Now, these are, of course, human torsos figurines. This is a female, the front, and this is the back. Beautifully modeled. This is the only prehistoric figurine we have from Bakun or from the Middle East that is actually modeled. You see the shoulder blades here. But in front, you have all these tattoos, upper body. Here, you have also a female, but extremely abstract. Also on the back. We don't really know the meaning of these things. But do you... we have to ask really our visitors, did they represent obviously some people. So the woman who had these tattoos, did she only took off her clothes for her husband in bed? Or she was really going around half naked? I would like to believe the latter. I think people did that in prehistoric not because it was a fashion, it was a symbol, it was symbolic. So there is no sense of really covering it. You go around and showing, and people know who you are. I think that's the symbolic thing. Maybe it's not, but at least you can bring it up with your visitors and ask them. Ask them, who has tattoos? Somebody says, oh, I have tattoos. Well, maybe you can ask where it is. I mean, but when you ask them, why do you wear it? I don't think anybody is going to say that I'm wearing because when people see that, they know my father is rich. I don't think so. It's all fun. Boyfriend, girlfriend, somebody asked, or they were drunk, they did it. I don't know. But they're not going to say that they did it for a status. Definitely not. But these are. And let's see. You see, this is a reconstruction, and I don't know if this drawing is there, but it should be. This is a couple. You see, this is the lower body of the female, and that's the lower and upper body of a female. I think they were pairs. And if I really want to stretch my model here, I should say that these guys were very important, this couple. To make that kind of figurine, whereas everything else is so abstract and grotesque, to have really pleasing modeled figurine and with tattoos, they must have been different. So then, the corollary with this, we are getting all these signs of a status. What is this status in the society? Then why we have to show what these elites that we are talking about, what were they doing? What were they controlling? Then you have that. I think, still, I don't know whether this drawing is there, but these pieces are there. These are door ceilings. These are bale ceilings for box bales, and these are what really the seals and some of the tokens that are right there in that Bakun section. Now, if this is there, you should ask your visitors, explain door ceilings. It's a lump of clay, they can see it, and they put it, they have a door, and they had a peg in the wall, and they would wound a piece of string around it and put this lump of clay and seal it. And ask them, why would they do that? They have to come up with something to protect it. If they don't come up with some answer, tell them to protect it. And then you ask them, can you really protect warehouse with a piece of clay, you can just, you know, just push it in and go in. So that is where you make them think. Of course not. So how else did they protect this? Because this society is now has laws, regulations. There is sanction. If you have sanction, that means if you can punish somebody in a society, you have political power. So this subsistence economy that you grow and you eat and you barter with your neighbors is gone. Now it's a political economy. You are making rich and you have an entourage that can actually force people and bang on their head to get your taxes, and some people who punish others. That is the whole thing. These whole pieces, these few pieces, and this drawing, which I hope is there, but there is a reconstruction there, tells you all about this society. And then once you see the vitrine, you see that lapis lazuli, turquoise, and copper is appearing. You see, now you're getting more symbols, symbolic things, wealth. Of course, we find and display their garbage. A lot of these things are recycled throughout generations and generations. These are the things that we found, which we're lucky, we found them. But you can imagine that wealth is changing and material culture is changing according to the status and the complexity of the society. So this, I'm sure, is there, this plan. And then you can show them. You see, this is the whole settlement, and these ceilings and door ceilings and all sorts of goodies that you see here, they were not found everywhere in the settlement, only certain places. 5 houses with all these rooms in the back, all of them, that is where they were sealed. And they were always, so if they are sealed and they are warehoused, you can also see this is a logical conclusion that these houses cannot be private houses. They must have been common with a guard guarding the back door, and then people coming and going, depositing and taking out materials from there, and then saving the seals and the tokens so that people know who has taken what and where. So they had this administrative system that you are dealing, you have in your vitrine, the samples of that. So you have to reconstruct the system for them, and that would be really interesting for them. And then you have the biggest house, probably of the couple with those figurines. And this is right smack in the middle of the settlement with the alleyway that going out and very well protected. You see all these houses. On this side you have houses, on this side you have houses all over the place. But they are well within the heart of the society to be protected. So the society is changing, is becoming more complex. Then, as soon as you look a little bit to your right, you see suddenly pottery is simple, very functional. Now you have all sorts of handles, you have some decorations, but these are scratched or punched. And you have all sorts of spouts, different forms, different shapes, these bottles that didn't even exist before. So all sorts of accessories, but not much art here. So where did that art go? Suddenly disappear, but it didn't really. You can ask them, what happened? Did the artist die? Did they forget how to paint pottery? No, not really. Because this is the time that cities are developing. And thousands of people are in the cities, and you simply, potters cannot, it's not economical to do that. And also you have to change the shapes of the pottery according to the type of activities, economic activities you have. So you have to have functional stuff. But the pottery, the art, these are close examples of the two pieces that we have. But the art now has gone into this. Same artist started working on textiles, on positive, and then on ceilings. Ceilings become the medium of artistic expression after the prehistoric period. When cities develop, ceilings develop, and artists concentrate on that. That is the medium of art. And you have, these are drawings, of course. Some of the drawings exist in the exhibit, but you can see it actually how beautiful they are. This is the earliest orchestra. You can see it's not in the in our exhibit, but I just wanted to show you two of the beautiful examples of ceilings, and some of which we also have at the in our gallery as well. And then another item of administration that you can actually point to them are these clay balls or envelopes, they call them, and this is a scanning. See, before we had to break them or have an X-ray which didn't show, but then there was a wonderful technology last year that we subjected all of the clay balls we had from Shohamish, and see how beautifully they show different tokens here. So you can actually point this to them and ask them what they are, explain to them, and what these things mean. And this is like really sending, physically sending messages from one place to another, not only as a safeguard, but relaying message without verbal, without writing actually, or telephone, or television, or spike, or whatever. So you can actually, because some of these clay balls are on exhibit, you can show them that there is a structure in the way they actually put the impressions on these balls. There are several offices involved in that, in this transaction. You see, they have usually polar impressions, upper and lower, and they have equatorial impressions. You see, this is one ball, and this is another one. You see that there are three different ceilings involved in that. That means either you have three different officials or three different offices involved in this particular transaction. And usually, the one that is equatorial is the most important, because these impressions are made first, the upper and lower poles, and then the equatorial actually goes last. So the big guy to whom this particular seal belongs must actually be the boss in this transaction. So there is a structure. These are important for, it's very much like these letters that people sign. The boss is up there, vice president is down there, and so on and so forth. So this hierarchy of administration, you can show it even before writing to your visitors. Now, there are other types of message conveying devices, like these tablets, that you see that this is another stage, the second stage. Before that, you have all these tokens inside, and then they realize that, well, why not just put the impression of the tokens and make a simple tablets and then seal it? That's the next stage. And you see that the size of tokens are impressed, and then they sealed it, and a little bit after this, maybe 50 years after that, they started scratching signs, ideographic signs. So at one point, all these impressions were gone, and then you start seeing proto-cuneiform or proto-Elamite writing systems. And there are other types of sealings. For example, these jars, you also see them in the exhibit. And this helps them to see that you cover your jar with a piece of cloth and cover it with clay, and then seal around it. And then when you look behind the clay ceiling, you see the impression of ropes, and that's how we can reconstruct the type of ceilings they were. Now, from there, the eastern part of the gallery is finished. But in that really 2 or 3 meters, you can say a lot about it. And then we have a big hall of the 3rd millennium, which we hope to fill soon. And then you have bronzes from Bronze Age Sorkhedom. They're not really that interesting. They're not good quality, and animals are just, dime a dozen. But what you can actually tell your visitors is the technique with which they were made. This is called, most of these bronze objects were made by wax technique. So the way this is done is the artists make a wax figure of the figurine or animals, just like that, and then they put it in a mold with sand and then clay, and then they heat it up. They heat it up, and the wax melts out, and then there is a hollow shape inside, and then they put the metal inside, and then they break the mold, and there you go, you have your figurine. So almost all of these lower stone bronzes and metal objects were made this way. So that probably is more interesting than pointing that this is a amulet, or they hung it from their neck, which you can actually say. But the way they made it, and also that sanctuary, that Sorkhedom, the Sorkhedom was really a sanctuary. It wasn't a residential area. So all these things were for ex-votive objects that they had. And most of them used by nomads who would use that sanctuary because there was no settlement around that sanctuary. Nomads on their way to various places would stop there and deposit these things for good measure with their gods. Then, of course, we have Persepolis. Now, in Persepolis, I don't know what the procedure is. You just show the plans and explain the architecture before you go to these things. But we have 3 major pieces, actually. And we also had some replicas made of plaster, which actually show the wall of Persepolis. By the same bad decision, they decided to put this down as well, because it's not real. But that was really very important piece. Instead of showing a photograph, you have this wonderful piece, and you can talk to people about it. So I hope that will come out too. But at this point, you have this gigantic stuff. These are capital columns, and then you have different types of bowls, and with a human head, you can easily, since you are bringing them from Assyrian hall, you can point to the inspiration for this type of stuff. But not necessarily with that. I mean, these are god horns representing gods, but you can actually show the difference between the Achaemenid, the way the Achaemenids rendered the beard with these curls in different places, and compare it with the ones that the Assyrians did. But that's a little probably too much. But you have to bring to their attention that these were not just naked, gray stone. They were all, we have evidence that they were all painted beautifully, very much like that. All the columns also were painted. Everything, just like Egypt. It wasn't naked, although I like it gray much better. But they were painted, and in most cases very gaudy painted. So that's how it was. And then you have these huge bull capital, of which you can see that the horns and ears were made separately because they would easily break when they wanted to transport this to the side or on top, so they would add these things later on. And again, these are stylized, but before that, you see that they put 2 or 3 veins in the face of the bull, because imagine if these veins were not here. It would be really very plain and boring space. So I think they did it not to make it very naturalistic, but to just simply break the monotony of a vast, smooth space that they had. But that's only my opinion. Then you have the different capitals. Of course, the one that we have is like this one, smaller one, black ones, but there are others without the, you see that the Achaemenid art and architecture is outstanding, even though because they get every element from their architecture and art, from Assyrians, from the Elamites, from Babylonians, from Egyptians, and the Greeks, but what they put together is unmistakably Achaemenid. As soon as you see it, it's Achaemenid. You're not going to make a mistake. Very much like these things. This of course, is Achaemenid invention. These capitals where the rafter just rests on the back of the animal. This is Greek. This is Phoenician, Egyptian. Same thing. This is fluted body shaft is very much Greek. And this is also Egyptian with some Persian influence in that. But taken as a whole, you can see that this is, you don't find it anywhere else, this combination. So Achaemenids were really wonderful in putting together, preserving the heritage that they, millennia-old heritage really of art and architecture that they inherited, and put it in a different light. So that is what they left for us. After the Achaemenid, I'm afraid you enter classical period. You enter Greek period. Near Eastern no longer. And that is why we are called Near Eastern languages as civilizations. With Achaemenid, we should finish. But because we have some stuff, we have some Sasanian and Islamic in our museum too. But our department does not, even we added this really, that Don Whitcomb is doing Islamic archaeology, and he does some Sasanian too. But our department is really meaningful. It has a very big meaning. Ancient Near Eastern civilization. That means end of Achaemenid period. After that, ancient Near East no longer. It's classical Near East. So, now, the last piece, this is wonderful, and I wanted to tell those people who decided not to put the objects in the Persian gallery because they were not excavated, they should take this down too. We don't know where it comes from, but nobody dares. Even Oscar Wilde Mascarella cannot dare to say anything bad about this piece. But look at this one. It's, you all have seen it. It's very simple, thin gold metal, but what I see in this is expression, anxiety, anger. Look at that. The tail is lashing, really. It's just the lion, that's the power of this artist. The lion suddenly stops, looking back with apprehension, and that is what captured it. So, just to talk about it as a beautiful gold piece is not going to do it. Even look at the artist. Even see the ripples that by turning your head is created in the neck of the animal has shown. And of course, in some sense, it's very formal too. You have pinion and then curved wings beautifully there. It's obviously a fantastic animal, not a real animal, but the artist gave it very much feelings that you can just enjoy it. And then I think this piece is missing, but I think it's a roundel. And you can imagine Achaemenid wardrobes were usually purple. And this color against purple is really beautiful. And I don't know whether the background of this is purple, but if it is not, when we go back to the museum and think about this, renewing it, we should really think about that. So with this, I'm finished my highlights. I'm sure I haven't showed you all of it, but I think if you can concentrate on a few of these things and learn it well, then the visitors will come out of the museum with some understanding. You don't really have to explain everything unless they ask you. Just take them one by one. Every 1 meter, you point them one beautiful thing that you can talk about or is object of controversy. People would have different reactions to that. They really remember that. And that's what they take away with them. Everything is 99% of what they see, they forget, especially if they're teenagers. Now, if you have a question, I'm here. If not, I'll let you go.